I started in my little walk-in closet with my iPad Pro and my MacBook Pro and just was recording my auditions there. And that is where I booked my Mass Effect. But they send you, here's the audition, record it, send it in. And, every once in a rare blue moon, you get a response saying, hey, you're the one they want.
She is an actress, voiceover artist, and stunt woman who has mastered the art of versatility.
She has voiced and played everything from an alien to an action hero.
Danielle Rayne joins us on today's episode. My name is Nancy Magarill. I'm a singer, songwriter, composer, performer, graphic and web designer.
And I'm Peter Michael Marino, and I'm a writer, producer, creator, performer, and educator.
We are New York-based artists you may or may not have heard of.
And we are here to introduce you to other artists you may or may not have heard of.
Hello, I'm so happy to have you here. I have to tell you,
Nancy, did you check this? Did you check us? We sound good?
Of course I did. Oh, ye of little faith. Didn't you see me
we're
go
only
home?
25 episodes in, and Peter's going, did you check the gate?
Right.
Isn't
I
that
gotta
like
be sure I sound good.
That's what they sound. Yeah, you have to sound good. Your whole career is riding on this.
It would really suck if we put this out and you just sounded like crap talking about all the audio work that you do. And all
Yeah.
that would be
I
really
sounded
funny.
totally underwater. And does this
Look.
sound okay? How's this? Is this good?
Danielle, we have
Yeah.
talked to many people who make their living using a microphone. These people have the worst audio setups at home.
When it
It's-
comes to
Really?
doing this stuff,
Yeah,
I know you
yeah.
don't because you are making your living doing audio.
Yeah.
You're always in your studio, which let's talk about. So you have
Yeah.
a studio. It's called Maverick Studios.
Studio Maverick, yeah.
Studio Maverick.
This used to be my horse stall. And
Was there a horse in it?
There
Yeah.
was a horse
Oh.
lying right where I am sitting right at this moment.
Your horse?
He is a beautiful white Arabian, and he was absolutely the most stunning horse. And we had this incredible. If there's an equine soulmate, he was mine.
Oh,
And it's just magical how we came together. And he was an incredible horse. I had him for 19 years.
Wow.
And, 2019, he had something called laminitis, which they don't know what causes it nor how to cure it, but it can come after an infection. And for 2 years, we tried to save him. And we just couldn't. So this place sat empty for 5 years. Literally, it would break my heart to go in the backyard. I would look at his stall, and all I could think of was him.
And there was also a pandemic and a lockdown going on.
Yes, and there was no horse to ride during the pandemic.
Right.
Oh,
Anyway, so last year, another thing broke my heart. My dad passed away.
yeah.
And then this year now, my mom has moved in with us, but we have a tiny house. I mean, I'm grateful we own our home. It is a whopping 1,250 square feet, and now
You're
it has
talking to two
four
New
adults.
Yorkers who have no.
Right. Yes. Yes. The
Ours is
studio apartment,
250
9
square feet.
people. That
Yeah,
makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah, yeah. But you have 1.5 baths at least, don't you? Please tell me.
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
good.
1.5. We need more than one toilet for all these people. So anyway,
Adults.
we looked at this stall, and I realized this is an empty space that could be used, that could be, memorialized to my horse. And so we converted this. We put in everything from rock wool and 2 layers of drywall and every kind of, sound protection. The only thing that really gets me is a helicopter coming straight overhead where I go, okay.
Because
gotta
you
hold-
didn't
hang on.
soundproof the roof.
There was only so
can't.
much soundproofing you
Yeah,
could do before it
really.
might fall on your head.
Right,
That
right.
was what my contractor said. Any more soundproofing, and this will fall on your head one day.
Wow.
Okay, that's not safe.
I guess
So-
I'm just thinking about now how I did voiceovers for a good spell in the 90s, the hot time to do voiceovers, And when you're in a studio, there's no windows, right? There's no
Right.
windows, right? I never really thought about it. There's sometimes you go to an audition and it's like you're in a prison. The window's very tiny so that you don't hear the helicopter.
Yeah, or you have intensely soundproof windows.
Yeah,
That are
soundproof,
almost
double
like no
glass.
windows. Yeah.
I have a window in my door of my whisper room, which is a 4x6 whisper room. So
Wait, what's a whisper room?
Yeah, what's a whisper room?
Whisper room is basically a sound booth. So I have my studio and it houses my whisper room. So I've literally got 2 walls, and that is one of the key things to soundproof any environment is to have separate walls, not touching anything. It's up on casters, although there's no sound underneath me. But in the house, when I used to have my whisper room, if someone flushed the toilet, I could hear it coming underneath the whisper room.
What is the purpose of having a whisper room in a soundproof studio?
Extra soundproofing, extra soundproofing. You want it to be dead space, quiet space, so it is literally just your voice. And hi, I live in Los Angeles, and people are constantly adding an ADU in their backyard, building a new home across the street. There's so much sound that you just cannot have cutting in on your recording just when you're getting, a good vibe going and you're rolling. And then all of a sudden you hear a truck. It's for your own sanity, but it also just, you have that assurance that your sound quality is already, it's starting at a base minimum of excellent. A certain amount of dBs, minus dBs, like minus 60 dBs is what you're going for a room tone. And so that's what I'm able to achieve by having the whisper room inside the studio. I'm able to have that kind of quiet in a very loud city.
Are you in the whisper room right now?
Yes, I am.
So are you always, no matter when you're recording, you're in the whisper room?
Absolutely. Yep.
Ah.
Yeah.
So what's in the rest of the studio?
I have a little self-tape area because I still get on-camera auditions.
Gotcha.
And I used to have to, take out all this equipment, put it all up in the family room. And then as soon as I was done with the audition and I submitted it, take all the stuff down, put it all away. Now it can just live out here.
Great.
It is a complete just a studio for both the on-camera and all my voiceover work.
Your beautiful horse left you a great gift.
Yeah.
At the right time.
Yeah,
It's really amazing that you're able to have that.
It is so much better to honor him than to just miss him, have my heart, aching for him. So now I can just honor him and be in here.
That's so sweet. It's so funny. I don't know if I remember you being a rider. I grew up riding, and I loved horses. So I'm a little jealous because, it's every little girl's fantasy, right, to have a horse.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, they put me up on a horse when I was 4, and they took a picture, and I was horse crazy from that moment.
Yeah.
Wow.
And at 10, I started with riding lessons, and my dad would drop me off at a stable on Saturdays, go play tennis all day, and then come at the end of the day and pick me up. And I learned how to ride hunters and jumpers. And then when I came out here to California, the man I fell in love with happened to be in the Wild West stunt show and had friends who had horses. I started riding their horses and learned how to ride Western and rode in Griffith Park and learned how to work cows and all that stuff. And then I got my own horse, and it was really a lifelong, wish fulfilled.
I'm so impressed. Danny and I went to school together. We went to a theater conservatory together.
Oh.
And one of the things
Classically trained? Both
classically
of you?
trained, yep. And although in our junior year, she went into the classical acting department and I went into the musical theater. But we still had all the similar training except for the musical theater part. But one of the things I think is so remarkable about you is that you have managed since graduating to consistently work in some fashion. You are like the quintessential oh God, what's the word I want to use?
Working actor.
Yeah.
Quintessential, but you've found every little niche that you can fit into. You've taken all of your skills, like at the bottom of a actor's resume, listener, it says skills, and you put all of your skills on there. And every people lie sometimes, but Danny can literally say, I'm a writer, I'm this, I'm that, I'm a stunt person. She's just using every inch of her talent to work. And I think that is so admirable and it's really fantastic. And you've just been going at it for so long. So I want you to tell a little bit about what happened when you moved to LA and then how you transitioned over the pandemic, as we had already talked about this, but I'd love for everybody to hear into the audio world a little more and all that, if you don't mind.
Yes, because the listeners do not know what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
They might be going, why does this voice sound so familiar? That really might be happening. Oh my God, think about that. At any given time, there is somebody on planet Earth who is listening to your voice. you decided to go to L.A. first thing.
No, she came to New York.
Oh, you came from
I
New York.
I was in New York for 11 years.
Okay.
And
You pass. You pass.
yeah. Well, as soon as I graduated, I did a bunch of scrappy little jobs, like a children's musical that toured Texas for a month and a cruise ship, so I could save enough money to move into a little studio apartment with my first roommate, who was my cruise ship cabin mate, Amy Fortgang, and we shared this tiny little studio on the Upper West Side, 91st and West End Avenue. And from there, I just, I went the normal routes. I waited tables for a number of years. I got my union card.
Did you wait online at 5 a.m. to go to an audition at Equity?
Yep,
Me
I
too.
sure did. Oh,
so
boy.
many times.
And open calls, TV, film. There were a lot of those,
Oh,
too.
right, because you can move, so you can go to, like, movement calls as well. I didn't have to do
Somewhat.
that because I don't move.
The big thing that my mother always reminds me of is the time that Martin Scorsese was casting for, it starts with something Angel, but it was a movie, and I had gone to one of those giant open calls. And then I had gotten the cruise ship job, and they actually, I think it was Angel Heart.
Yeah.
They tried to call me because they were interested in me for the part that I think it was Lisa Bonet ended up doing.
Oh, my
God.
God.
And my mother is just like freaking out because I'm on a cruise ship,
Yeah,
and cannot be reached
Right.
before cell phones, before any of that.
Yeah.
I was like, yep.
You only booked
opportunities.
that because you took the cruise ship job.
Well, I didn't book it. They just wanted me to come in for a callback.
Oh,
after
you
one
would
of
have
those
gotten it. You would have
ridiculous
gotten it.
early morning things. But yeah. So anyway, lifetime in New York. I actually got my first pension credit and my first year of insurance by being a stand-in on a movie, which was Tim Robbins and Elizabeth Pena, Jacob's Ladder. Directed by Adrian Lyne,
Yep.
and I was Elizabeth Pena's stand-in. And it was the
Perfect.
first time I got a pension credit and all that good stuff.
And a lot of experience, I imagine, just
because we did not get
constantly on the
much
set.
film experience, like on-camera experience at our college training program. So
Got like
I
none.
actually got trained by the Girardi brothers, who had been the team with Meryl Streep in Sophie's Choice. So they were the ones teaching me how to find out about framing and all this sort of stuff. So I went on and I did my Law and Order and the soap operas in New York City.
Oh, yeah.
And was like, I wanted to try pilot season. So I came out to LA.
This whole time, what were you, where were you picturing yourself? Like, what was your goal, I guess?
Well, you know what? I was pretty happy in New York. My days would be like had a recurring role on a soap called All My Children.
Yes.
And so I would go
my
do
buddy
that.
Fritz Breckkeller, he was a stage manager there forever. I know everybody from All My Children, the casting people, and it just came up yesterday with someone else talking about another soap opera, and it always comes up, just like the City of Buffalo always comes up.
The soap operas are pretty small.
Did you work with Bill Timoney?
Yeah, I think I did.
Right, of course, Bill Timoney, yeah.
It's, it was so long ago.
Yeah.
So long ago.
So,
But Mark Teschner, who is out here in New York, he's been General Hospital casting director. I actually worked for him on Loving when I was, doing something. I've done a lot of photo double, or like if somebody has an evil twin and they need somebody to be the back of her while they're fighting, while they're doing their scenes. I have done that in New York, and I'm still have done this here for General Hospital. But Mark Teschner cast me in Loving a couple times before he came out to L.A., and then I came out to L.A., and he's just one of those great guys who keeps me working.
That's
but
so wonderful.
Anyway, so I come out here for pilot season, and I have a return ticket for 7 months, and I meet this very handsome stuntman actor who works at Universal Studios and the Wild West Stunt Show and all the stunt shows. He literally would run from one stunt show to the next. And I fell in love, and I never went back and let the ticket expire. So I'm out here, and now I have to figure out how to make a living out here. And I'd been pretty successful in commercials. TV commercials had really paid my bills in New York.
on camera.
Yeah. A lot of that. It was a great way to make a living.
What's your type?
You know what? Back then, I had some AT&T small business spots. There was a big campaign campaign for, it was Disney and a couple other, it was like one of those try things that they did for a contest. Disney World and AT&T and Delta Airlines, like holding all those conflicts. I would have a lot of really nice spots like that. My big claim to fame was that I did this Campari spot that took
I
me to
remember
Rio de
that.
Janeiro for a week and Milan, Italy for a week. And they
That's how
paid me
it's.
like a fashion model where I got $2,500 a day and $1,250 a day that I was off. And I just had crazy amounts of money to spend in a beautiful location.
Yeah.
So, I mean, those were the kinds of jobs that I did. And
Yeah.
I loved it. And I came out here and I needed a survival job. And I was not going back to waiting tables. But, I did fall into that community of stunt performers at Universal Studios.
Of course.
And
Yeah.
I've always been athletic. I've always loved, being strong and fit. And I started out doing a Halloween show they had where I was literally wearing a vinyl bikini and a
Oh my
giant
God.
headdress. And it
Yes.
was a character based pretty much, like an evil Lady Macbeth, a cyber Lady Macbeth really was what it was.
Love the
And
twist.
it was so much fun. I had a great time and started auditioning for the shows. And then they did the Terminator 2 3D live action show at Universal Studios Hollywood,
Great show.
which I
Saw
had
it 3
seen
times.
in
You
Florida.
probably saw her.
Yeah, well, if you saw it here in Hollywood, I did it. I opened the show and I closed the show. I
Yes.
held on to that job like nobody's business.
Yes. Yes.
Because it kept you in shape. You worked 5 days a week, 10 shows a day. If you got an audition, you could call someone on the roster and say, hey, can you take this shift? I got to, be here at this time, and fill in a shift and know that you were going back to that job. If I got a job for a while, I became the spokesperson of a cruise line. I could be gone for 2 to 3 weeks on a cruise ship.
Yeah.
And I could come back and know I still had that job.
Yeah.
So I held on to that job for all it was. I sucked the life out of being Sarah Connor. And in the meantime, I did make some great connections. Like when I did this short film called Portal No Escape.
Which
it
was a huge film.
Yeah, it's had over 27 million views at this
Yeah, I
point.
remember watching that blow up. Go, this is
Yeah.
so cool.
It was 1 million views a day for 5 days in a row. I think we bumped out Lady Gaga's, hit song. It topped that. But anyway, so that was just because the guy who was the original stunt coordinator was my original John Connor in the Terminator 2 show.
out.
So it gave me so many great relationships that kept me working, that gave me opportunities to do things that I would not have done, certainly not waiting tables.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nancy, isn't it so interesting how yesterday we spoke to our friend Melinda Buckley, who was on Broadway doing musicals and now kind of works in the industrials, like,
Yeah.
big brand announcement things with people in them and stuff. And how she was like telling us, I said, charmed life, because like it's so nice to hear one thing goes to the next, goes to the next. And sometimes it's just chance, like that the agent who lived in her building in the elevator.
Oh yeah, Vinny Lift lived in her building.
So
Wow.
like, he always go,
Yeah.
oh, I know you're an actor. Will you water my plants?
Yeah.
But
Which
it
led to a
actually
role.
wound up leading to
Yeah.
it
Broadway
became
show.
A Broadway show. So there you
Right.
go.
That's great.
But I use the word charmed so cautiously because to everyone else, everyone's life seems charmed. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not taking away from all of the the shit in between where things are not lining up and things are not connecting and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
But I do love it when everything does work out that way, because it's kind of like, oh, this probably is the way it's supposed to go.
Well,
Let's
and
stay on
hopefully,
this
if
ride.
you've lived your life right, you look back and you remember the great things that happened. Not all those times like, and then I spent 7 months, couldn't find a single bit of work or something, to that effect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's
yeah.
also understanding an artist's life, especially an actor's life, where you're working when you're an actor, you're waiting for someone to hire you. When you're a creator, and this is the difference with the solo theater, the solo show world, and music, maybe a singer-songwriter world, we're always creating our work for us. But when you're waiting for someone to hire you, it's a whole different ballgame, because you're constantly auditioning. and having to be in people's faces to get hired.
Yeah.
And then you're getting your reels out and then you're doing new reels and you're doing new headshots and all, a lot of, there's so much work that goes into it.
And bad theater, you're doing bad theater that you have to be bad theater
Absolutely.
too. Yeah.
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 And I love when you reach the point in your life where you're like, I am now recognizing that it's bad. This
I knew it was bad from the beginning.
This knowledge will inform my next choice. Look, I tell you, man, I don't think actors really always know how to read a script. I mean, a lot of actors don't. They're not reading it for like, how is the audience going to feel? They're reading it for like, what does my character do? How do they grow? What do they change? Nobody. It's very hard to see the whole picture unless you've kind of done every single thing in this industry.
And then we often make compromises where it's like, okay, I know Hedda Gabler is a great play. I want to do it. They're not going to hire me at a big theater to be Hedda Gabler. But this tiny little theater down here in this basement across the street from my apartment, wants me to play Hedda Gabler. It's not going to be the world's greatest production, but I'm going to get a chance to be Hedda Gabler.
Yeah.
Right? It's in a basement theater in New York City, and I got to run from my soap opera job and run up to the theater so I can go do that. That's what I'll do.
When are you playing Hedda Gabler next?
Oh, boy, I wish.
Why not?
The last theater I did here in L.A. was Hamlet. I played Gertrude in Hamlet. And that was a lot of fun. It was the Ensemble Shakespeare up in Pasadena. And I enjoyed it a lot. But I like what I'm doing now as much.
So let's talk about what you're doing now, because you went from, so you were doing stand-in work at the Goldbergs, right?
Well, during the pandemic, so just little arc, when my son was in high school, my husband was full-time as a stand-in on TV shows. And those are crazy long days, leaving the house at 5:30 a.m., not being back until 9. So I decided...
Tell our listener what a stand-in does.
So a stand-in on a TV show, basically they do the blocking. The actors come in, and then we see where they're standing, what they're doing, how they move, and they go away so that the hours of boring lighting can happen with the stand-ins, and then the actors can come back still fresh, having done their makeup and, had a chance to rest and go over their lines, and they come in and they do the work. It just basically, if you've ever had to stand in for yourself on a set, it is exhausting. By the time you're actually ready to do your scene, you're too tired to do it.
Yeah.
So a stand-in here in Los Angeles, God love it, it's a union job, so it's a good paying job.
Yeah.
And when I was doing a co-star on a show called Without a Trace, and I was opposite Anthony LaPaglia, who did not do a lot of the rehearsals. His stand-in did, which is common. You're number one on the call sheet. Right. You need a little more rest time. And while I sat there talking to him, he was telling me how he put his kids through college, was able to buy a house doing stand-in work. As long as you get in and you're covering somebody good, excellent paying job. Great work.
Thank you for
that.
So
that's what a stand-in does. And my husband, stunt performer, he got injured and he wasn't able to do stunts anymore. And I was in the doctor's office with him when they said, you cannot fall down 10 times a day anymore. This has to stop.
No.
So once he was healthy enough to be able to work, I suggested he try stand-in work. Because a stunt person watches what the actor's doing, has to copy it down to, every little minute detail, and it makes him one of the best stand-ins you will find. He's so professional, he's such a team player, and he does a great job of copying exactly what his actor does. So
amazing.
I had gone to do retail because he was doing that full time. I was no longer making enough money from commercials. And, this big stretch of non-union work was really taking over the commercials. It was not the same industry I was in. So I go do retail. I'm miserable. The soul's getting sucked out of me. The pandemic hits. Retail is shut down. And they needed a full-time stand-in for the show, The Goldbergs. And Tommy had been in there since they started. And the DP was a wonderful man who said, how about Danny standing in for, and it was Haley on The Goldbergs. And I ended up doing that for the next 3 years.
Amazing.
So great.
It was,
that's
it was
insurance,
perfect. There was no other work.
Pension, it's so many good
And
things.
it's worked during the pandemic.
Shut down.
Right.
Yeah. We were
How were
grateful
they able
for
to
it.
stay open?
Oh, it was stuff that was really challenging. I mean, we wore masks and shields, and then you're asked to read a script while going downstairs, and you're like, I can't see anything. I can't see a thing. But I mean, they kept us safe. We had a wonderful COVID officer, Julie, and she made sure that, we lived by so many rules. It tested a lot of people's patience.
Yeah.
But it kept us safe. And we were still working when this show would get shut down and that movie would get shut down. Bullet Train, we called it COVID Train because it shut down so many times during filming. And it was at the stage next to us at Sony. And it was a great way to make a living and get through the pandemic. And in the meantime, the voiceover stuff was still happening. I was, sometimes running from Sony stages to some tiny little voiceover studio. This is before I had my own, and they would go back and open it at 7:30 at night, so I could record this spot, which back then was for Biden when he was running to.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah. So I was doing several spots for him, and it was the perfect job at that time. It was a great transition job. I loved it. Then season 10 they shut down. Tommy has been working now on the show Ted, which is a lot of fun. I've been able to go in and do a little day playing, standing in on that show too. But yeah, and then the voiceover stuff has become my full-time gig, especially now the audiobook narration.
So Danny, I didn't know she was doing this. And I remember I was going somewhere one day and you sent me a link to one of your books. And I was walking through Central Park. It was during the pandemic. I think it was during the pandemic. And it was your voice is so soothing and comforting. And I remember going, oh my God, this is just like listening to you in this way was so wonderful.
Oh.
It was just so calming. I think you need to do meditation stuff too.
Oh, I was just going to ask. I could really use you telling me to practice gratitude every day. That would be awesome.
Right?
Yeah,
You could be the Marianne Williamson of audiobooks.
Hello, nonfiction authors. I'm out here.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I love that kind of stuff. I love the wellness books. The thing I love, though, and I think it's because it allows me to bring in what my son Jack calls my little side action hero, my little side of action hero, is the mysteries and thrillers. Because especially if it has a kick-ass FBI agent, female lead, I love that stuff. I get into it. It's not only that combination of getting to be super creative and create a whole cast of characters, but to live vicariously through someone who is strong and kicking ass and taking names.
Yeah. I don't want to forget this idea, so I have a project for you.
Okay. I'm in. Yes, and
you should do like you do for a book. Do it with Hedda Gabler. And break it up into parts and just roll it out for your friends and family to listen to. And then you've started to manifest that dream.
Okay.
That's interesting.
I'm gonna hang on to that. I'm gonna hang on to that and see. There are certain
give it to Broadway
pieces
Podcast Network. I'm sure it's a public domain, isn't it?
Yes, that's the word I was just looking for. Public domain. If it's public domain, you can create your own, audiobook version of it. You're the producer. You're hiring yourself, or you're hiring yourself for royalty share, and that's what you do.
Yeah, this is a really great idea for you, and I'm glad that I was able to give it to you today.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. And if I decide I need a male voice to come in and do the other part.
Oh, stop.
Doesn't he have a great voice?
Yes.
I was going to ask you about that. So I was made fun of my whole life. I just had a girly voice when I was a kid.
Well, that explains everything.
Thank you. And then I lived in Queens. My grandmother literally sounded like Edith Bunker. Like, I'm not even joking. And actually, our house was like 4 blocks away from where that house was.
Yeah.
And then we moved to Long Island when I was a teenager.
Long Island.
Yeah. So I became Long Island. I became Queens, and the first day of acting class in Buffalo State College, which of course a freshman, I don't need to take the you're letting me in because I have experience. The first day, I don't know, introduced myself, and the professor's like, young man, you will see a speech therapist immediately, or you will never work in this business. You know what? I went. I found there was one on campus. I found a speech therapist. I got rid of my accent. I came home for, Christmas, and all my friends were like, okay, whatever. What's with the accent?
Oh, isn't that crazy? People resent it. They really resent it.
Yeah. So a very long way of getting to one day, the girl I went to junior prom with in junior high school in Long Island was a manager, an agent somewhere. And she was like, hey, I think you should audition for this Mountain Dew rap commercial. So I did, and I booked it because I have good rhythm, so I knew how to do rap. So I booked it, and then that just led to suddenly I'm doing voiceovers everywhere, like literally freelancing with everybody and blah, blah, blah. I never would have guessed it. I still don't believe it. How'd that happen for you?
When I would audition for commercials in New York City, occasionally the cast directors would be like, we're doing a voiceover here. Would you come and audition for this over here? And I think back then I was like, oh, no, I do on camera,
Right.
It's interesting. I started doing voiceover, I think it was 2009. I don't know what got into my head that I wanted to do voiceover, but I did. And I got really lucky. One of my friends from Terminator, she was a Kimberly Duncan,
yes.
the one who Sarah Connor would shoot.
Theme park connections.
She did voiceovers, and she was doing a lot of great work. And when I told her I wanted to do it, she said, well, come and audition for this casting director who I work with all the time, Bridget, and she does World of Warcraft. And so I auditioned for that, and I got it. And so but it was basically taking, all of the Shakespearean characters and how dare you come into my area, and I was a death slayer, I was a dragon. And it was a lot of fun, but it was the first thing. And from there, she happened to have a good friend who was an agent. I was doing my reach outs trying to get a voiceover agent. And as soon as I said I just worked for Bridget Burdine doing this, she was like, oh my God, that's my best friend. She became my first voiceover agent, Michaela. And she was great. And from there,
Was that in the 90s?
No.
2000s?
That was in the 2010s.
2010s.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And I did commercials. I was a Christmas cookie for Target. Oh, that's crummy. And I was Veteranix for Mass Effect Andromeda. And it was incredible doing my first big video game, the first big one, because while I'm not a gamer, I knew Mass Effect. I'd certainly heard it. And when you book it, you're sending in these auditions. You don't know what it's for. They don't give you a name. It's Project X. And all of a sudden you have booked Project X and you're standing in front of the microphone on your first day going, what am I doing? What am I doing? And they say, this is Mass Effect. And you're like, what?
And when you say you're sending in, so tell the listener, that means you're sending in a reel, like you actually go in and record a demo for them? How does it work?
So once you have an agent, you have to pretty much at that point have your own home studio. This day and age. When I first started, it was kind of like, yeah, you can come in, and record here in my office or go to the studio. You still went into studios for auditions, but definitely during the pandemic, it became there is no other option. You only have a home setup or you just don't.
And you're not going to get any direction either in your audition.
Exactly, which is the worst part because I love taking direction.
I love it,
but
too.
I started in my little walk-in closet with my iPad Pro and my MacBook Pro and just was recording my auditions there. And that is where I booked my Mass Effect. But they send you, here's the audition, record it, send it in. And, every once in a rare blue moon, you get a response saying, hey, you're the one they want.
That's right.
And it is a lot of fun. It is a lot of work, and it is a lot of keeping your head up for all the times that you send in stuff, and it maybe was like, oh, I love that. I'd love to do something like this, and you hear nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the heartbreak of, of the wait.
And it's whether or not you're like, I'm willing to keep going. Keep going and not give up.
Do you do things like Comic-Con? Because of some of the voices you provide. Oh, yeah, you're laughing. Great.
Well,
this is like our second interview wasn't we talking about the Pokemon?
Oh, yeah, Jason Page. Do you know Jason?
No, I don't. I don't. Yeah,
he's out in LA.
He's like a rocker!
Yeah, he's
one of the
voices.
characters.
Oh, that's
He
great.
he
One of the
composed and sang
Pokemon
the
songs.
Pokemon theme.
Yeah.
Yep, my kid was into Pokemon. My kid was
Every
into
kid
Pokemon.
was.
Yeah.
So your kid would love to meet him at Comic-Con.
Yeah.
How
So
about
when
you?
the for me, Comic Con was because of Portal No Escape.
Oh,
The
you did it.
director
Right.
Dan Trachtenberg, when he had this show, the Totally Rad Show, and they always had a Comic Con panel. And then one year, and I'm pretty sure it was 2011 because we shot it in 2010. He released Portal No Escape there at Comic Con during their panel, and that's when it, and then he dropped it on YouTube, and that's when it went viral. So the following year, I got to go to Comic Con and sign autographs and take pictures with people, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of
Yeah.
fun. And subsequent years, I would go. I went again because of Mass Effect, and you're standing there with your kid, and there's really nothing more awesome than somebody coming up and going, "You were in Portal No Escape, and you're Veteran X, and can I get an autograph?" There's my kid, and I'm like going, "Yes, you can."
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for making me look like a hero in front of my child.
I thought you were going to say there's nothing better than being at Comic-Con all day with your kid, and your kid just gets to watch, like, a giant robot walk by, a witch, a donkey.
Actually, he probably remembers that
whatever.
more than the standing in line and
No, but it's for
somebody.
you. That's the great thing. And for your kid, it's like, I saw everything today.
Yeah, you're right. You are so right.
What is your favorite kind of work to do?
Man, I love so many parts of this business. You were saying in the beginning how, I seem to have scrapped my way into every category of this industry. I did, the spokesperson, the industrial work that you were talking about, mostly filming. That job as the spokesperson for the cruise line, it was a 6-star luxury cruise. They would pack me up on the ship, and I would wear the finest clothes, and
Because they were
would have my hair done.
They were shooting on the ship.
I was the onboard spokesperson, so I'd be like, "Welcome to the beautiful Crystal Serenity. Let me tell you all the
Wait, you were in
wonderful things."
person
No.
welcoming people? No.
I was on their TV. So, I did all the shipboard media. So they would film me. So when the person came into their cruise ship cabin, there's a woman on their talking head on the box
Oh,
going,
my
"And then
God.
here's the so-and-so dining area, and this is open from so. Treat yourself to a lovely massage," as they
shit.
massage me. And I'm like, "Can I have this longer, please?"
Oh,
and,
my God.
So that was glorious. And I also got to take my husband, my son, once I took my mom on these ships. My son turned one off the coast of Cannes, France. While I was filming, he was learning how to walk down the halls of a cruise ship. It was
Talk
it
about
was sweet.
wobbling.
Yeah, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
So that was one of my favorite jobs ever. And I've just had so many incredible experiences. When I was playing Sarah Connor, I got to go through a boot camp with Captain Dale Dye, who, for Saving Private Ryan, was teaching actors how to be more like soldiers instead of actors. And, there were so many experiences that I got to go through because of, it wasn't the illustrious career of being, a leading actor in a TV show, but it's been really fun, and I've loved scrapping my way through.
That's
business.
really cool.
Yeah, it seems to me like you're the kind of person that needs to have a variety of things to do. It's just like that's how you thrive is when you have a variety of things to do.
Yeah, I'm a
Is that not
creative
true?
junkie. That is,
Oh, okay.
I'm
Oh, I
totally
call
a
myself a
junkie.
creative junkie, too. What is next for you?
I have just
Besides Hedda Gabler.
the public domain version of Hedda Gabler, brought to you by. I
Your
am
booth.
going to. I've just wrapped up book 8 in the Nash Running Bear series that is written by Bear Charlton. He was the second author to hire me for an audiobook, and this is our 11th collaboration.
Wow, congrats.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Probably the one that I sent you. I've worked with that author a second time on a YA science fiction book. And And then Bear pretty much has kept me working consistently all the way, through this journey. And he's sent me the Bible for another series that he wrote, and it's a 5-book series. So that will be the next project that I'll probably start doing my prepping and my research on.
And what does the Bible mean?
Bible is like the cast of characters who are the main characters. Like if there's an actor who's a prototype. When you're working independently on an audiobook, sometimes you really get to have a good relationship with the rights holder, who is usually the author, and ask them, who do you picture? If you could cast this as a TV show or a movie, who would play this character and who would play that character? And it's really, really great. It very helpful because it kind of gives you an idea. Like one of the characters in the Nash Running Bear series, he said, I think of Leon Rippey in Saving Grace. Leon Rippey has this kind of rolling kind of voice that just kind of like comes out like this, and he's got pauses and
It's like
hesitations.
Matthew McConaughey.
Well, yeah, but
Sounds
this guy is a little older and very wise, and that was such a great example for him to have that in the Bible for this character.
Yeah.
That I just have to go Leon Rippey, and I'm right into
and you're in it.
Character.
Wow.
Because you have to jump from one character to another.
Now, didn't you tell me, or maybe I'm mistaken, but that sometimes you actually don't do characters where sometimes they don't want you to read that way, or there are different styles
different
for these
kinds.
audiobooks?
Right. So there's fully voiced narration, where you choose a different voice for every character. Then there's partially voiced, where maybe you just give your lead character or maybe a couple of side characters and your lead character some real voices, and everybody else is just read in your voice. And then there's unvoiced, which is just you reading it straight through, your voice, he said, she said, that's it. There's no he said, she said, no changing the tone or anything. It's just you.
When you get a book to read, how long does that take? And how many days are you sitting in that studio? How many hours a day can you sit in that studio and do this work?
There's a common saying in audiobook narration, whereas the rest of voiceovers is a sprint, audiobook narration is a marathon. You start by, as soon as you get the book, you might spend however long it takes you to read the whole book, take all of your notations, if there's other languages, if there's other accents, how much of a deep dive do you need to do, in a Tennessee accent if you've never done one. So the prep is one thing that can take anywhere from a few days to a week, depending how much time you have for prep. Then you just start recording the chapters. At this level where I'm working in ACX, you do all of your own production. So you're also doing all of the mastering. So I'll go in, I can probably record anywhere between 3 and 4 chapters a day before my voice starts to get a little too raspy, and then I need to take a break. So at that point, then you're also editing everything that you did the day before. You might also know that, I think I'm just going to record this book between 12 and 6 because that's where my vocal range is best for the characters that I have to do.
Wow.
Versus I can't record this in the morning because my voice will be too deep and I won't have the range to talk as Muna, who's all the way up here, and I need to have that mid-range more. So it is planning your day. It is, sitting down and doing the recording, which is the fun part, and then doing the editing, which is not the fun part.
Right.
And, finally uploading the chapters as you've completed them.
And generally, how long do they give you to do I guess a standard size book? I don't know if that's even.
You're depending on the author, like if they have I'm releasing this book on this date and I want it done by here, or I want this released at Christmas time, they may have a hard and fast date they need to have it done. My current author, Bear, he's always just like, deadlines. What's a deadline? I don't care. Just get it done. You got a cold, you got something that came up, take whatever it does, And that happened to me earlier last year where I got COVID, and I was in the middle of recording a book, and it took me almost 2 weeks before my voice was back to where it was when I started recording the book. And you can't record anything in between because your voice will sound so bad. Yeah, exactly. So it is a nice thing because it is, you set your days. If you're a night owl and you want to record at night, that's what you can do. If you're a morning person, whatever it is, once you know how your voice is going to behave at different times of the day for different characters, you get to set your own. So that's why I love this work.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so
I
glad
love
this
all
was,
of this.
yeah,
I
I
love
think this
all
is
of this.
really interesting. I think people are going to really enjoy hearing this too. I think it's a really fascinating. First of all, the audiobook stuff alone is fascinating, and just all the stuff that you've done. It's
Yeah.
really wonderful.
You're such
Well,
a great example of like how like people in the arts or artists, actually, I guess everybody just has such interesting, weird lives.
Yeah. And one of the things is it's our creativity right at core because, we're fighting the battle with AI. I'm sure you've heard
Yeah.
plenty of AI recordings, whether it's a book, whether it's a news clip, like clip on,
Commercials. I'm hearing
and
them on
it's
podcast
AI.
commercials all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm
And I
like,
have,
this is definitely AI.
yeah. And that is the threat. So the
Yeah.
thing that keeps us, you know, that far away from AI is our ability to really put our heart and soul into something, which AI will. They may get AI to cry one day, but at this point, we can do that genuinely, and that is still.
AI doesn't really do nuance very well, which is important.
Look,
Yeah.
I jokingly say this that, until AI can translate what I say onto a phone, it's not going anywhere. Because it's like, I jokingly say,
Duck instead of fuck, like things
Siri
like that.
doesn't, yeah, and Siri doesn't get Jew, is what I always say. It doesn't understand Jew. It's like everything I dictate in there, I always have to fix like 20 times. It's so ridiculous.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for checking us out. Links to today's guest can be found in the show notes.
Don't forget to subscribe, like us, rate us, and tell all your friends about arts and craft.